The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Kensington Palace as Prince William adjusted his tie one final time. Today was supposed to be routine. Another royal engagement, another carefully planned public appearance. Kate stood. Beside him, her elegant blue dress catching the light as she checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Are you ready for this?" William asked, though they both knew the question was unnecessary. After years of royal duties, they had become masters of composure, able to handle any situation with grace and dignity. Kate nodded, smoothing down her dress. "The children's hospital visit should be straightforward. Dr. Peterson said the new wing is almost ready for the opening ceremony next month." Their security detail had already briefed them about the schedule. They would tour the renovated pediatric ward, meet with hospital staff, and spend time with some of the young patients. It was the kind of engagement they both genuinely enjoyed, meaningful work that made a real difference in people's lives. The drive to St. Mary's Children's Hospital took them through familiar London streets. William watched the city pass by, through tinted windows, his mind already focused on the day ahead. These hospital visits were always emotional, but they had learned to channel those feelings into positive energy for the families they would meet. Kate reviewed her notes one more time, memorizing the names of key staff members and details about the hospital's recent achievements. She had always been meticulous about preparation, believing that every person they met deserved to feel valued and remembered. As their convoy pulled up to the hospital's main entrance, crowds of well-wishers had already gathered behind metal barriers. Photographers clicked away as the couple stepped out of their car, both wearing their practiced public smiles. The hospital's chief executive, Dr. Margaret Peterson, greeted them warmly. "Your Royal Highnesses, thank you so much for coming today. We're thrilled to show you what we've accomplished with the renovation," Dr. Peterson said, her voice filled with genuine excitement. The hospital lobby buzzed with activity as staff members lined up to meet the royal couple. William and Kate moved through the introductions with ease, asking thoughtful questions about each person's role and expressing sincere appreciation for their work. "The new wing represents a complete transformation of how we care for our youngest patients," Dr. Peterson explained as they walked toward the elevator. "We've incorporated the latest medical technology while creating an environment that feels more like home than a clinical setting." The elevator doors opened to reveal the pediatric ward's main corridor. Colorful murals decorated the walls, and soft lighting created a warm, welcoming atmosphere. It was clear that every detail had been carefully considered to reduce the anxiety and stress that children often experience in medical settings. "This is beautiful," Kate remarked, genuinely impressed by the thoughtful design. "The children must feel so much more comfortable here." As they continued their tour, visiting various treatment rooms and meeting with medical staff, everything seemed to be going perfectly according to plan. The couple was relaxed, engaged, and enjoying the opportunity to see the positive impact of their patronage. But as they approached the ward's family lounge area, Dr. Peterson's expression suddenly changed. She paused mid-sentence, her face registering confusion and concern. Through the glass doors ahead, something had caught her attention, something that clearly wasn't part of the planned itinerary. "I'm sorry, Your Royal Highnesses," Dr. Peterson said, her voice now uncertain. "There seems to be something happening in the family area that I wasn't expecting. Perhaps we should—" But William had already seen it, too. Through the transparent doors of the lounge, a scene was unfolding that none of them had anticipated. His usual composure faltered for just a moment as his eyes widened in surprise. Kate followed his gaze, and her hand instinctively moved to her chest. Whatever was happening beyond those doors was clearly significant enough to affect even these two individuals who had seen almost everything in their years of public service. The carefully planned hospital visit was about to take an unexpected turn that would challenge both of them in ways they hadn't prepared for. The sight that awaited them would test not just their royal training, but their fundamental humanity. Through the glass doors of the family lounge, a young girl sat alone on a colorful beanbag chair. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, with long brown hair that fell in tangled waves around her shoulders. What struck William and Kate immediately wasn't just her solitude, but the way she held herself. Small arms wrapped tightly around her knees, rocking slightly back and forth. Dr. Peterson quickly approached one of the nursing staff. "Who is that child? Why is she alone in there?" she whispered urgently. Nurse Sarah Collins, a veteran of the pediatric ward, glanced toward the lounge and her expression grew somber. "That's Emma Harrison. She's been here for 3 weeks now. Her mother was in a car accident and is in intensive care at the main hospital across town. Her father—" Sarah paused, choosing her words carefully. "Her father hasn't been seen since the second day." Kate felt her heart sink. Even from this distance, she could see that Emma was wearing the same small hospital gown that all the child patients received. But hers looked like it had been worn for days. The little girl's eyes were fixed on the television screen, but her vacant stare suggested she wasn't really watching. "Where are her relatives? Grandparents? Anyone?" William asked, his voice tight with concern. "We've been trying to locate extended family," Dr. Peterson replied quietly. "Social services is involved, but in the meantime, Emma stays here. The medical staff have been taking turns sitting with her, but we're understaffed today due to the renovation schedules." As they watched, Emma reached into a small plastic bag beside her chair and pulled out what appeared to be a photograph. She held it against her chest and closed her eyes, her tiny shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Kate's professional composure began to crack. In all their years of royal engagements, they had encountered sad situations. But there was something about this little girl's profound loneliness that pierced through all their training and protocols. "We should continue with the tour," their private secretary suggested quietly, checking his watch. "The schedule is quite tight today." But neither William nor Kate moved. They stood transfixed by the sight of Emma, who had now curled up even smaller in her chair, still clutching the photograph. "What's her medical condition?" William asked. "Why is she here specifically?" Nurse Collins checked her tablet. She was in the car with her mother during the accident, suffered a mild concussion and some bruising, but physically she's recovered. "We've kept her here because she has nowhere else to go, and the trauma team feels she needs stability and monitoring." Through the glass. Emma suddenly looked up, perhaps sensing she was being watched. Her eyes, red-rimmed from crying, met Kate's gaze directly. For a moment, the little girl's face showed a flicker of recognition, not of who Kate was, but simply of another person who seemed to see her pain. Kate's hand pressed against the glass door, and Emma tilted her head slightly, studying this elegant woman in the blue dress who was looking at her with such obvious concern. "She draws pictures," Nurse Collins continued, trying to fill the heavy silence. "Constantly. The art therapist says it's her way of processing the trauma. She draws the same thing over and over, a house with 3 stick figures standing in front of it." William watched as Emma carefully placed the photograph back in her plastic bag and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper and a broken crayon. Even from where they stood, they could see her beginning to sketch those same 3 figures that the nurse had mentioned. "How long since she's spoken?" Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She talked a little the first few days, asking for her mummy mostly, but this past week she's been completely silent. The child psychologist says it's not uncommon in cases like this. The royal couple exchanged a look that communicated more than words could express. This wasn't just another tragic case they would observe from a respectful distance. Something about Emma's situation had reached them on a deeply personal level. Kate thought of her own 3 children safe at home, probably playing in their garden at this very moment. The contrast was almost unbearable. She imagined George, Charlotte, or Louis in Emma's position, alone, confused, and abandoned by the very people who should be protecting them. As if sensing the intensity of their attention, Emma looked up again. This time she held up her drawing, a simple sketch of 3 stick figures that somehow conveyed more loneliness than any words could express. The sight of that small hand holding up the drawing, seeking even the slightest acknowledgement from the adults watching her, was the moment when both William and Kate felt their carefully maintained emotional walls begin to crumble. Kate's hand was already reaching for the door handle before anyone could stop her. Royal protocol dictated that such interactions should be carefully planned and supervised, but maternal instinct had overridden years of training. "Your Royal Highness, perhaps we should discuss this with the social worker first," Dr. Peterson suggested gently, but Kate was already pushing open the glass door. Emma looked up with startled eyes as this beautifully dressed woman entered her small sanctuary. Kate moved slowly, understanding that sudden movements might frighten an already traumatized child. She knelt down beside the beanbag chair, bringing herself to Emma's eye level. "Hello, Emma," Kate said softly. "I'm Kate. I saw your beautiful drawing. Would you like to tell me about it?" Emma's grip tightened on the crumpled paper, but she didn't pull away. Her eyes, still puffy from crying, studied Kate's face with the careful attention that children reserve for adults they're trying to figure out. William appeared in the doorway, having followed his wife, despite the concerned whispers of their security detail. He watched as Kate settled herself more comfortably on the floor beside Emma's chair, her elegant dress spreading around her like blue petals. "Is that your family in the drawing?" Kate asked, pointing gently to the 3 stick figures. Emma nodded almost imperceptibly, the first communication she had made with anyone in days. Behind them, Dr. Peterson was having a quiet but intense conversation with their private secretary about the implications of this unplanned interaction. Hospital staff members had begun to gather, some documenting the unprecedented scene with their phones before security could intervene. Kate noticed that Emma kept glancing toward the plastic bag containing her treasured photograph. "Would you like to show me your picture?" she asked. After a long moment of consideration, Emma reached into the bag and carefully pulled out a creased family photo. It showed a smiling woman with Emma's same brown hair, a man in a blue work shirt, and Emma herself, gap-toothed and grinning, sitting between them on what appeared to be a park bench. "They look like wonderful parents," Kate said, accepting the photo with the reverence it deserved. "Your mummy has your same beautiful smile." Emma's lower lip began to tremble, and Kate instinctively reached out to smooth the child's tangled hair. The simple gesture seemed to unlock something in Emma, and she leaned slightly toward Kate's touch. "She's sleeping in the big hospital," Emma whispered, her first words in a week coming out in a voice hoarse from disuse. "They won't let me see her because she's sleeping too much." Kate's heart clenched. She looked back at William, whose own composure was clearly being tested. He had moved closer and was now kneeling beside them both, his presence adding to the intimate circle they had formed on the hospital floor. "I'm sure the doctors are taking very good care of your mummy while she sleeps," Kate said carefully. "And you know what? I think she would want you to take good care of yourself too while she's getting better." Emma considered this, then looked down at her hospital gown, which Kate now noticed had food stains from several meals. "I don't know how to take care," Emma admitted. The simple honesty of that statement nearly broke Kate's composure entirely. She felt tears pricking at her eyes and had to take a deep breath to maintain control. "Would you like me to help you?" Kate asked. "Maybe we could start by brushing your hair. I brought a brush in my bag." Emma's eyes widened with surprise. The idea that this elegant woman who seemed so important would want to brush her hair was clearly beyond her young comprehension. William watched his wife dig through her small purse and produce a travel hairbrush, something she always carried for touch-ups during long public appearances. But now it would serve a far more important purpose. "May I?" Kate asked, and Emma nodded slowly, as Kate began to gently work through the tangles in Emma's hair. The child closed her eyes and leaned into the touch. It was clear that this was the first nurturing physical contact she had received since her world had fallen apart 3 weeks ago. The hospital staff who had gathered to watch fell silent. They had seen many emotional moments in their work, but there was something profound about watching the future Queen of England sitting on a hospital floor, tenderly caring for an abandoned child as if she were her own. "Better?" Kate asked when she finished. Emma reached up to touch her now smooth hair and managed a tiny smile, the first anyone had seen from her since the accident. Dr. Peterson approached quietly. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we do need to discuss Emma's situation properly. Perhaps we could move to my office?" But Emma's small hand had found Kate's, and she was holding on with surprising strength. The message was clear. She didn't want this moment of comfort to end. Kate looked at William, and he could see the internal struggle written across her face. Royal duty demanded they follow protocol, but human compassion demanded they stay with this child who so desperately needed them. In Dr. Peterson's office, the full scope of Emma's situation became heartbreakingly clear. William and Kate sat across from the chief executive, while Emma remained curled in Kate's lap, unwilling to let go of this unexpected source of comfort. "The truth is more complicated than we initially explained," Dr. Peterson began, her voice heavy with the weight of difficult revelations. "Emma's mother, Sarah Harrison, has been in an induced coma for 2 weeks. The initial prognosis was optimistic, but she developed complications." Kate's arms tightened protectively around Emma, who was playing quietly with the buttons on Kate's dress, seemingly oblivious to the adult conversation swirling around her. "What kind of complications?" William asked, though his expression suggested he was bracing for bad news. "Severe brain swelling. The doctors are doing everything they can, but—" Dr. Peterson paused, glancing at Emma. "The likelihood of a meaningful recovery is diminishing daily." The social worker, Mrs. Janet Foster, joined them with a thick file under her arm. She was a tired-looking woman in her 50s who had clearly seen too many cases like Emma's. "We've been unable to locate any suitable family members," Mrs. Foster explained. "Emma's maternal grandparents died several years ago. Her father, David Harrison, has a history of substance abuse and domestic incidents. After the accident, he visited twice. But when he realized the extent of Sarah's injuries and the responsibility that would fall to him, he abandoned her," William finished, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Social services took emergency custody, but our foster care system is severely overcrowded. Emma has been moved 3 times in the past 2 weeks, which is why Dr. Peterson agreed to let her stay here. At least it provides some stability." Kate looked down at Emma, who had begun humming softly, a tuneless melody that somehow conveyed both sadness and hope. "What will happen to her? Eventually, she'll be placed in long-term foster care, hopefully leading to adoption. But children Emma's age with trauma histories, it's challenging to find suitable placements." Emma suddenly looked up at Kate with those large, solemn eyes. "Are you going to leave too?" she asked in her small voice. The question hit Kate like a physical blow. She looked at William, seeing her own anguish reflected in his face. How could they explain to this child that their lives, their responsibilities, their very existence was structured in a way that made it impossible to simply step in and provide the stability she so desperately needed? "Emma, sweetheart," Kate began carefully. "We have to leave today, but that doesn't mean we don't care about you." "Everyone says that," Emma replied, with the devastating wisdom that trauma often brings to young children. "They all say they care, and then they go away." Mrs. Foster shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "Your Royal Highnesses, I understand this is an emotional situation, but we do need to be realistic about Emma's future. The system isn't perfect, but we have procedures." "What if those procedures aren't enough?" William interrupted. "What if this child falls through the cracks while we all follow proper channels and tick bureaucratic boxes?" The room fell silent. Dr. Peterson and Mrs. Foster exchanged glances, clearly uncertain how to respond to the evident passion in William's voice. Emma had returned to her humming, but now she was also drawing again, this time directly on a piece of paper from Dr. Peterson's desk. Her small fingers moved the broken crayon with careful precision, creating another version of her family portrait. But this one was different. Kate watched in fascination as Emma added two new figures to her usual trio. These new additions were taller, more carefully drawn, and positioned protectively on either side of the original family group. "Who are these people, Emma?" Kate asked gently. "The nice people who might not go away," Emma replied, not looking up from her drawing. The implications of Emma's artwork were impossible to ignore. In her young mind, she had already begun to imagine William and Kate as part of her support system, as people who might provide the stability that had been so violently ripped from her life. Kate felt tears threatening again and had to look away from the drawing. The child's desperate hope was almost unbearable to witness. "There is one other thing," Mrs. Foster said reluctantly. "Emma's been asking about visiting her mother. The medical team at the main hospital thinks it might provide closure, help her understand the situation better. But she can't go alone, and we don't have staff available to take her." Emma's head snapped up at the mention of her mother. "I can see Mummy?" she asked, her face lighting up with the first real excitement they had seen from her. "If we can arrange proper supervision," Mrs. Foster replied carefully. William and Kate looked at each other, and in that moment, an unspoken decision passed between them. Royal protocol, scheduling conflicts, and official duties suddenly seemed far less important than the needs of one small, broken-hearted child who had already suffered far too much loss for her young life. 2 hours later, William and Kate found themselves in a situation they had never imagined when they woke up that morning. Their official schedule had been quietly rearranged, their security detail had been briefed on the new plan, and they were walking through the corridors of London General Hospital with Emma's small hand firmly grasped in Kate's. Emma had been transformed during those 2 hours. The hospital staff had found her a clean dress, a simple pink outfit that actually fit properly. Kate had spent another 20 minutes working through Emma's hair with proper detangling products, creating neat braids that made her look like any other 7-year-old girl preparing for an important occasion. "Remember what we talked about?" "Sweetheart," Kate said gently as they approached the intensive care unit. "Mummy is sleeping very deeply because the doctors gave her special medicine to help her brain rest." Emma nodded solemnly, clutching a drawing she had made specifically for her mother, this one showing just the two of them together, with the words, "I love you, Mummy," written in careful, uneven letters across the top. Dr. Richards, Sarah Harrison's attending physician, met them outside the ICU. He was a kind-faced man in his 40s who had seen many difficult family situations, but even he seemed somewhat overwhelmed by the unusual circumstances of this visit. "How is she today?" William asked quietly, while Emma was distracted by the colorful murals that decorated this hospital's walls too. "Stable, but unchanged. We're maintaining life support while monitoring for any signs of brain activity improvement. I have to be honest with you. The longer she remains in this state, the less optimistic we become about her chances of recovery." Kate knelt down beside Emma before they entered the ICU. "Are you ready, brave girl?" Emma took a deep breath and nodded, though her grip on Kate's hand tightened noticeably. The intensive care unit was a maze of beeping machines, monitors, and tubes. Sarah Harrison lay motionless in the center of it all, her face pale but peaceful. She looked remarkably like Emma, with the same delicate features and brown hair, now spread across the hospital pillow. Emma froze in the doorway, her eyes wide, with shock at seeing her vibrant mother so still and surrounded by medical equipment. For a moment, Kate thought the child might run away, but instead, Emma took a tentative step forward. "Mummy looks tired," Emma whispered. "Yes, she does," Kate agreed. "But look how the doctors are taking such good care of her. All these machines are helping her rest properly." Emma approached the bed slowly, her small face serious and concentrated. When she reached the side rails, she stood on her tiptoes to get closer to her mother's face. "I brought you a picture, Mummy," Emma said in a voice barely above a whisper. "It's us at the park where we feed the ducks." She carefully placed the drawing on the bedside table, where her mother would be able to see it if she opened her eyes. William watched from the doorway, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. The sight of this small child trying so hard to be brave while facing something that would challenge adults was almost impossible to bear. Emma began talking to her mother in the way children do, a stream of consciousness narrative about her days at the hospital, the nice nurses, the food she had eaten, and the new people she had met. She didn't mention her father's absence or her own fears, instead focusing on positive details as if she could will her mother back to consciousness through sheer optimism. "I met a lady today who has very pretty hair," Emma said, glancing back at Kate. "She helped make my hair pretty too. And there's a man with her who has a kind face like Daddy used to have before he got sad all the time." Kate felt her heart break a little more at Emma's innocent observation about her father's transformation from kind to sad. The child's perceptiveness was remarkable and painful. After several minutes, Emma reached through the bed rails and gently took her mother's hand. "I'm being good, Mummy. I promise. I'm trying really hard to be brave like you taught me." Sarah's hand remained motionless in her daughter's small grasp, but Emma didn't seem discouraged. She began humming the same tuneless melody they had heard earlier, and the sound seemed to fill the sterile room with something indefinably hopeful. Dr. Richards stepped closer to the bed, monitoring Sarah's vital signs on the various machines. Suddenly, he frowned and leaned in for a closer look at one of the displays. "That's interesting," he murmured, adjusting his glasses. William and Kate exchanged glances. "What is it?" Kate asked. "Her heart rate has increased slightly, and there's been a small change in her brain activity patterns since Emma started talking to her," Dr. Richards explained. "It could be coincidental, but sometimes familiar voices can stimulate responses even in deeply unconscious patients." Emma, oblivious to the medical discussion happening around her, continued her one-sided conversation with her mother, occasionally patting Sarah's hand in the same comforting way that Kate had patted Emma's hair earlier. The profound love between mother and daughter was evident even in these tragic circumstances, and both William and Kate found themselves wondering what would happen to that love if the worst occurred and Sarah never woke up. As the afternoon sun began to fade through the hospital windows, Emma had finally grown quiet beside her mother's bed. She remained holding Sarah's hand, but her small body was beginning to show signs of exhaustion from the emotional intensity of the day. "I think we should let Mummy rest now," Kate suggested gently, though she hated to interrupt the peaceful moment between mother and daughter. Emma nodded reluctantly, but before letting go of her mother's hand, she leaned as close as she could to Sarah's ear. "I'll come back soon, Mummy. The nice people promised they wouldn't forget about me." Kate's breath caught in her throat. When had they promised that? More importantly, how could they keep such a promise given the constraints of their royal responsibilities? They prepared to leave the ICU. Dr. Richards pulled William and Kate aside. "I want you to know that Emma's visit today was remarkable. We saw more brain activity in those 30 minutes than we've recorded in the past week. It doesn't necessarily mean Sarah will recover, but it suggests that some part of her is still fighting." The drive back to the children's hospital was quiet. Emma sat between William and Kate in the back seat, her small head eventually coming to rest against Kate's shoulder. The events of the day had clearly overwhelmed her, and she had fallen into an exhausted sleep. "We can't just walk away from this," Kate whispered to William, careful not to wake Emma. "I know," William replied, his voice heavy with the weight of their situation. "But we also can't make promises we might not be able to keep. Emma has been disappointed by too many adults already." When they arrived back at the children's hospital, Emma woke up disoriented and clinging. The thought of returning to her solitary vigil in the family lounge seemed to terrify her after experiencing a day of genuine care and attention. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Emma asked as they walked her back inside. Kate knelt down to Emma's level one more time. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to understand something important. William and I have jobs that take us to many different places to help many different people. We can't promise we'll be here every day." Emma's face began to crumple, and Kate quickly continued. "But we can promise that we won't forget about you. We're going to talk to Mrs. Foster and Dr. Peterson about making sure you have everything you need. And we're going to check on your mummy, too." "But what if you forget?" Emma asked, the question revealing the depth of her abandonment fears. William stepped forward and knelt beside Kate. "Emma, do you know what a royal promise is?" She shook her head. "It's a very special kind of promise that people in my family make when something is really, really important. And I want to make you a royal promise right now." Emma's eyes widened with interest. "I promise that you will never be alone and forgotten as long as I'm alive. That doesn't mean we can be with you every day, but it means we will make sure you're safe and cared for and loved. Do you understand?" Emma studied William's face with the careful attention she had given everything that day, as if trying to determine whether this promise was different from all the others that had been broken. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Can I keep your phone number?" The innocent request nearly broke both their hearts. William looked at his private secretary, who was frantically shaking his head, but William ignored him. "Actually, we'll do something better. We'll give you a special way to reach us whenever you need to." He pulled out his phone and showed Emma how to use it to take a photo of herself. "This is so we'll remember exactly how brave and beautiful you are." As they finally prepared to leave, Emma made one more request. "Can you help me write a letter to Mummy, in case she wakes up while I'm sleeping?" Kate found herself blinking back tears as she helped Emma compose a simple note. "Dear Mummy, I had visitors today who made me feel safe. I hope you wake up soon, but I'm being brave while I wait. Love, Emma." Walking out of the hospital that evening, both William and Kate were changed by their encounter with Emma. They had entered the building that morning as royals performing a duty, but they were leaving as human beings who had been confronted with a level of need and vulnerability that protocol had never prepared them for. In the car ride back to Kensington Palace, they sat in contemplative silence, each lost in their own thoughts about Emma's future and their role in it. Neither could have predicted that their routine hospital visit would lead to such a profound emotional reckoning. That night, as Kate tucked her own children into their safe, warm beds in their secure home, she thought about Emma spending another night alone in a hospital lounge. The contrast was unbearable, and she found herself making quiet phone calls to people who might be able to help a small girl whose only crime was being born to parents who couldn't protect her from life's cruelest circumstances. The royal promise William had made wasn't just words. It was a commitment that would require them to navigate uncharted territory between their public roles and their private consciences, between royal duty and human compassion.